in San Francisco. That's where I learned about product and in general, the meetups. So as soon as I came back, I was so excited about it. I came back and I thought, hey, there's a product tank in RTP. Why not? There are a lot of product managers, right? And no, there was no product tank. So it all started from there. It took me a few weeks and finally decided that, well, there's no product tank. Why don't we start one? So I reached out to the product, asked them what do I need to do if I want to get started with one. They guided me through the process. And then I went and recruited. Then was an econ, and the minute I told them what it was about, they were, yes, we want to do it. All three of them have experience with organizing other meetups as well. So I have learned during this year, I've learned a lot from them. And it took us maybe 2 to 3 months, I think, to get organized, find speakers, and get the word out about product camp. And a year later, this is where we are. So this is a very special moment for us. This is Emily. She's got a message for you guys. Thank you.
Hello, Product Team RTP. My name is Emily Tate. I'm U.S. General Manager for my product. I want to say congratulations on your 1-year anniversary. We love seeing the things that are going on out there. As a global community, we've grown so much this past year. We're about to be at 160 cities worldwide, and you're a part of that. So keep going, sign up to speak, sit on a panel, just come and have some great conversations with us. We all get better and learn from each other. Enjoy your celebration today. I want to say a special thank you to your local organizers. We really couldn't do this without them. They're amazing. So say hi to them and thank them for all their work this past year. Have some cake for me and enjoy your topic tonight, which is the evolution of product management. And I hope to see you at my product conference soon.
So she's just one of the people that we work with from Mind the Product that help us really, they support us and they help us with what we're doing locally with product management. A little bit of data here, some numbers. In the last year, we have organized 8 events. Some of them are content like tonight, some others having happy hours as well. And it has been a very good way to network and get to know other people as well, and especially share the challenges that we have in product and know that we're not the only ones that have those issues. We've had 11 speakers, 9 sponsors, and as of last night, we had 340 members in Product and RTP group. Of those, about a little over 200 that have attended our events, and every time we get new people. So thank you, all of you, because without the sponsors, without the speakers, but especially without the audience to speak to, we will not be where we are today. So tonight, I need to access. So we have Jason today from VP of Product User Voice. A little bit of information about Jason. He leads the product and design teams at User Voice. Jason is responsible for driving product strategy and creating systems to quickly validate product direction. Where is Jason?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you so much.
We should freestyle rap that all after our talks list.
You go first.
Right here.
Okay. Nope.
No. Nice. All right, so hello. Congrats on the 1 year celebrations, great. We did a quick background on myself. Going to talk a little bit about kind of the speed in which we can develop software and how it's getting faster, and then what some of the implications are for product managers, and then go into a little bit of detail on like why product discovery is really important, and implications there as well. So here's my gray hair curve. Was that NC State? Anyone here good at NC State? One. Where else did you guys go? UNC? Security? So I was at NC State. I studied engineering, but then I moved on to just started offering some early classes on entrepreneurship. So the university was kind of thinking through how we wanted to structure that. And so I took advantage of that, and I started MyFit with my friend Max. He was at Duke, but what we were doing there was kind of predicting college admissions. And so that moved us out to the West Coast, and then I did user growth engagement for Yelp. So trying to get more people on Yelp, writing more reviews. Then went to ClearSlide, which is kind of an enterprise SaaS company, and then had the opportunity to start something new again with my friends, Pizza, which is kind of a platform to automate the quick service industry. So we were making it really easy to get really high throughput numbers at restaurants. So if the Chipotle does like 180 people an hour, we ended up opening about 7 restaurants in New York, DC, San Francisco, and we were doing about 600 people an hour. So that was a good proof of concept, and then we are now kind of licensing that software out to bigger brands. But then I wanted to move back. San Francisco was great for about 10 years, and so kind of had a long run at Pizza, and was fortunate enough to join the folks at User Voice, which were right down the street. So this is a picture of Pizza, though. So yeah, I didn't show you that slide this weekend. But basically, the concept is you order from iPads or your phone and you pick food out. But that's the reason that the gray hair curve went way up, because building this in a year was very, very stressful. So the first question is like, how is software development evolving? The 3 things that come to mind for me as a product manager is it's getting cheaper, it's getting faster, and it's becoming more agile. And what this really means is, the available software, the infrastructure is getting faster for engineers to build and validate, solutions to customer needs faster. So as a product manager, the question I want to pose for this talk is, how do we prepare for that, right? If engineering is able to test things really quickly, where do we invest our time to be most effective as product managers? So I imagine every company has some form of this, right? As product management, it's ideation. You start to get the universe of what you could work on. You look at your vision and your objectives, and then you prioritize features against that. You want to do some amount of discovery. You go into the spec build test, and there's beta and launch. Everyone that we talk to User Voice has some form of this flow. We find that most product managers spend a lot of time here, right, in spec build test. And I think that's pretty normal and natural, right? Product managers tend to be type A people. We like when we can get things organized. We like writing user stories. We like, connecting the dots, so on and so forth. But what is the business impact of doing these things really well, right? These to me are more about execution. It's you already feel confident, right? So the business impact that we've been thinking more about is, how good are product managers at really understanding the customer need that it is they're doing, right? I think it can be natural for product management design, because they have the ability to do this, to get really excited and already jump into a spec and to jump into the solution. And that can be dangerous, because by the time you do that, you're turning on a lot of really expensive resources, right? You're going to your feature teams, you're telling 8 engineers that are making X amount of money a year to start working on these things. And a lot of times what happens is when you get to beta launch and you ship it, and your adoption numbers are super low, as a product manager, over time you'll start to lose credibility, right? If you're not doing proper discovery earlier in the approach here. What we then hear is like, well, who's going to specify all the solutions? Isn't that what I'm for? I'm a product manager. I come up with these great ideas, I'm innovating, and then I just deliver these like genius ideas to the engineering design teams. That's very dangerous. We need to be better at empowering design and engineering to do this work, right? Like, engineers go to school to figure out how to build new solutions to new things, right? So the better that product management can get at proposing better problems and articulating those problems with data, you're going to get far more buy-in from both engineering and design, right? And it's natural as a product manager because you're talking to so many customers, or hopefully you are, that you want to arrive to solutions quickly. I've listened to customers, I know exactly what they want, just build this. But I think great product managers are able to ask the right questions to get engineers and design thinking in such a way that they arrive at an even better solution more quickly. Right? Engineers understand the feasibility approach, which product management, even if you have an engineering background, kind of need to divorce yourself from. Right? You want to rely on that team to innovate and understand the feasibility of the things they're building. So maximize your leverage. This one's super simple, but a lot of PMs that I've seen in the past don't spend enough time here. But it's basically just connecting the dots, right? Engineers and designers are not often in the meetings where product managers are, articulating vision. They're walking through the, quarterly objectives. They're walking through how they're going to measure if they're doing a good job on those objectives. So product managers would really benefit from kind of reiterating this over and over to the engineering and design team, so they're kind of part of the mission. A lot of times what happens is PMs are in meetings where they get this context, and then the first thing that they're thinking about is going to their feature teams on what features to build to achieve these objectives, right? The better job you can do connecting the dots with these teams will, create more buy-in early. So in prioritization, one of the things that we can do better at user voice is, how do the features we're working on align with the bigger picture, right? Like, help us connect the dots as to why this feature matters. Spend more time on that up front, and you tend to see good dividends on that. This is really a big one too. There's this book called Roadmaps Relaunched or something, but the general notion is, and it's hard to get away from this, when you think about a product roadmap, you think about features, right? You think about these sequence of features. It's easier to think about it that way, it's easier to write it that way. You have this big longitudinal, idealistic representation of exactly what we're going to build, right? And I've seen some companies where like 8 months out, they're like, next October we're going to launch this feature in February, or we're going to launch this feature in October. It's going to do this specific thing. This is this big idealistic representation of where you're headed. Like, it's good that you're figuring out how to sequence your work forward, but you need to focus more on needs. Like, what are the needs we're solving, and how are we quantifying these needs? The reason that I love this is if you get the team focused on the customer need, and the solution you end up going with is wrong, the team is way more bought in to try again, right? So if you just focus on the solution as a product manager and you launch it and adoption sucks, the team's like, I told you so. They're like, they have like the evil engineers in the corner, like, yes, it was true. No adoption. No one really hopes for that, but the point is, like, focus on the actual need, because if you get people bought in on that, you can iterate many times towards a better solution. So one way to do this is in discovery. Like, spend more time validating the problem, right? If you think you know a feature solution that's going to move metrics, go back to the need or problem that feature is supposed to be solving, and just ask people. Sit them down and say, have I aligned with the problem you think you have well now? And you get a lot of really interesting feedback on it before you even talk about how you're going to fix it. And then, if you're spending more time on discovery, right, like, I feel that engineering and design is also leaning on product to like really articulate where the market is headed, right? Like, those teams want the product person to go deeper on the market. where product people want the CEO to go deeper on the business, right? Like, we don't want the CEO just dictating what features to build next. We would rather, she spend her time on the highest leverage thing that she can, right, with all the context that she has. So I think similarly, if you think about engineering and design, they can create better outcomes if the product manager come prepared with more market intel. Where's the market headed? What's the next big wave? Yes, we're working on this feature now, but help us understand like why this feature maps to a big wave. So a lot of this talk is kind of pointing in on B2B SaaS. Consumer apps, you might have the luxury of having 10 million users a week, where we could push an experiment, we could come back from lunch, and experiment council could tell me if you're right or wrong, right? And we move on. Whereas enterprise SaaS are a little bit slower moving. We're at the luxury of scale. So, get more rooted with your sales team. Sit down on the sales calls, hear why you're winning deals and why you're losing deals. Right? So, a user voice like we subscribe to every time a deal is lost. We send all that up to the whole company if they want it via email. Right? So you can subscribe to this channel that gives you more context as to why we're winning or losing deals. Right? So as product managers, I think just providing this context gets you a lot more buy-in with the rest of the team. You're putting the customers first in a visceral way. Similarly with customer success, like this is one of my favorite teams to work with. Usually the interaction with customer success is they have 10 things they want you to work on. You have your hourly week meeting. They give you those things and you review them. You're like, okay, well, we'll meet back. But we like to get on various calls with success to hear like how they're onboarding new accounts. Because this is where you might have a really good sales team who's able to get more people to buy your product. But then once they get in, they realize their use case might be a little weird. Maybe they've sold something you don't really do. And so that usually comes out of success. So invest more time with these cross-functional teams and then bring that back to design and engineering. Because then ultimately what we're trying to do is we rush so hard to build so fast that when we get to the end of this thing, oftentimes we just ship the feature and all we can think about is moving on to the next thing. This is pretty common. But what we really need to do is connect the dots between, okay, we had a need that we were focusing on. We built a feature because we thought it would add value. And then there's this big question of like, well, did it add value? How do you know it added value? And that's why, if you, where we're sitting on Pendo, Pendo is an example where, you get behavioral analytics of like, what was the adoption rate of that feature, which we like and we use. And then in user voice, it's understanding the why, right? Like, you said you had this need, we've identified you, we launched the feature, tell us did we deliver value or not? How can we make this thing better? So closing those loops is super important, and it just takes a lot of time, right? So that's why if we look back at, spending time in discovery, and then spending time understanding did we actually deliver value, really has a high business impact, whereas the product managers just spend their whole life here, just like, as quickly as they can in the spec, into, And then this is often where you'll butt heads with engineering and design because they want to be empowered too, right? Like, no designer likes a PM coming in and saying, like, here's the design, like, this is what I'm thinking, let's use this. And then no engineer just likes to be given, a Lego kit that's like, here, go put these things together. So I think product management can ease up out of here and rely on your team to innovate whatever the solution might be. Spend more time on discovery, and then spend more time kind of giving the rest of the team all the context that we're lucky enough to have. Like, how do these things connect back to the greater vision and strategy of the business? So these are, obviously this chap's on the evolution of product management. So I think these things are maybe obvious to a handful of people, but I think we're really trying to figure out like how do we do a better job at product discovery? Just because it's hard. There's a lot of logistics involved. You're kind of nervous about sending emails to all these people that ask, is this right? Do you feel good about this problem? Do you feel good about this proposed solution? But if you get good at like exercising that muscle, you have to do less work iterating if this thing doesn't work. Right? Like the big annoyance here is engineering can move so fast. If you're giving them garbage in, you're having to iterate more to go back to find a solution. So, yeah, that's my chat. Yeah. Questions? You're ready.
What are some of the ways that you do discovery?
Yeah, so how do we do discovery without plugging user voice? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so if I think about product discovery, we're kind of focused in on need. So part of that is understanding like what is the customer segment that you think has that need and trying to identify, some companies will have like a customer advisory board, right? So it's pretty common to have 7 or 8 customers that you keep going back to kind of validate that the need you think they have is real. That has pros and cons. Like the pros are you can kind of move fast and build a relationship with those people that ask quick questions and get quick answers. You'll always risk kind of a myopic response, right? You get these same people over and over, and if the market starts to evolve, you might pigeonhole yourself into building a product for 8 people that are tangential to where the market's headed. Yeah, we tend to figure out like what is the best representative group of people that we can talk to, and then ensure that we're bringing them into the conversation at the right point. So we generally start kind of with our problem or our need and say like, let's get them on the phone, or let's send them an email, or let's target them and say, hey, are these the 2 problems that you're considering with this need that you expressed? And then you kind of take it from there where if there's validation, you kind of move on to, well, let's talk through what a solution might look like, and let's put that in front of them. If we were to build this, would you come? Right, so Joshua, who's one of our designers here, is really good at putting together quick mocks, right? And when we talk to engineering, we'll say like, hey, we might throw all of this away, just as a heads up, but this is the mock that we want to use to validate the solution. We kind of do a kind of quick iterative process like that, where, as with any like user experience testing, once you hear from about 5 people, you generally start hearing the same things over and over.
In your prioritization process, how are you managing sort of new feature development and design debt and tech debt and all that kind of stuff, sort of in the same real time?
Sure. So how do we manage new features versus design debt versus tech debt? Well, the good thing is we have no debt. Yeah, not true. It's a good one. It's worked a little differently, I think, everywhere I've worked. I think Yelp allocated a certain percentage of every sprint to debt, right? Whether it's kind of technical or design-centric. It kind of depends on how big your team is too, right? Like user voice is still really small. We're like, I think 40 people. We have 2 feature teams and an ops team, and so everything that we're prioritizing better be adding business value. But it's always a kind of balance with engineering and design, right? Like design is always like, oh, we're dated, we're using old material, like I want to move here and here. Engineering, rightfully so, is trying to figure out how to make our system more, performant. But I think what we try to do is optimize, of the features we're building, what part of the code base are they touching, what part of the design are they going to be impacting, and then see if we can kind of couple that with quick wins in and around like infrastructure or design. But I think it's tough, right? Like as a product manager, you can look at a product and you have this new vision and things are starting to click. Like, man, what if we could just start fresh? Do all these things. But again, with enterprise SaaS, you have training, you have people already paying money, people that are building you into their own workflows. So it's not as easy, unfortunately. Yeah.
Jason, when in your career you realize that product discovery is really, and you know sources like Silicon Valley, product boot is a big product discovery as well.
Yeah. So when did I discover in my career that discovery was so important? I think I discovered between my transition, I think when I was at Yelp, I took for granted what it means to have tens of millions of users, right? When you have that many users, product discovery takes more of a form of experimentation, right? So if you have a good infrastructure such that you can run quick cohort analysis on features and actually shift behaviors of people, and you already have all your metrics defined, so you know how that impacts ad revenue, it's far easier to go into that and just run an experiment. I think once I left Yelp and started to get back more into the startup world with pizza, product discovery, I think is so important because you really only get to launch once, right? And so when you're kind of contemplating that, like you need to really figure out what kind of message you want to send as part of that launch. And so you're hyper close to the customers, right? We were hiring people from Craigslist 20 at a time to walk through this warehouse we rented in downtown San Francisco, and we built this fake pizza store in. Super creepy, but people still came in. They're like, it's like, you're like, what is this? I'm like, just wow, like, I measured them go through this place, and like, we probably saved hundreds of thousands of dollars in like poor store design because we were just building these really cheap discovery templates of the store. So that's where I started to get a bigger appreciation for like, man, this stuff's actually working. I was like very hesitant if it was going to work or not. And then even more like in the B2B SaaS now, going back to like the training and impact of launching features as an experiment can be dangerous. We were just talking about this today, right? You have a bunch of people paying you anywhere from tens of dollars a month to millions of dollars a month, and people aren't happy when you throw an experiment their way and they trained up 2,000 sales reps on how to use something. So product discovery is more about like, how do we get ahead of that in an effective way. So it kind of changes, like depending on what kind of business you are, what kind of product you're offering. But
So just a comment for the gentleman's question, how do you prioritize Silicon Valley product like manufacturer, agile, sorry. So you have dedicated resources for scouting, whereas for the say X percentage of your focus on scouting.
yeah, so how do you prioritize between discovery and delivery?
So there has to be partnership with engineering and design.
Yeah.
Dedicated resources for discovery and dedicated resources for delivery and execution.
Yeah, so the question being like, how do you prioritize if you have dedicated or shared resources for discovery versus just delivery work? I think that kind of goes back to how big your team is and how many resources you have available to move forward. You're always trying to balance keeping the business healthy with the confidence you have in your features you're prioritizing. So at user voice, again, we're still small, 2 feature teams. A lot of the product discovery work that we do, we tend to lean more on design to figure out without needing like engineering prototypes, right? So design systems and tools are getting way better too, so you can create these beautiful, very realistic prototypes very quickly, and we tend to rely on that.
In the launch phase, the successful measurement of GAM points based on your company uses any points on that. You get feedback.
Yeah.
Self-development.
Yeah, so how do you validate once you launch something that you've gotten feedback that you're headed in the right direction or not? Good instrumentation is always really important. So like use Pendo or use someone similar. But one easy thing to do is kind of, as a product manager, tell your engineers what your success metrics are ahead of time. And we're guilty of this at User Voice. We do a better job of it, and we're getting there. But if you can tell engineering, look, if we can shift behavior by 20%, we're happy with this, and we'll keep running. Right? So if you call your shot ahead of time, engineers will tend and design will focus more on those metrics. Like, how do we achieve that? So when you're launching, it's some form of behavioral analytics and then doing good surveying kind of after you launch. Mas?
You touched on it briefly with answering this question, but can you talk a little bit about how you goal yourself as a product manager? It sounded like one of the metrics may be how many times you have to iterate for launch, for example.
Yeah, so how do you know when to stop iterating?
Or how do you know that you're successful in terms of making sure that the engineering team is going to have the right problem, as they say, to come up with a good solution? Like, how do you know
Good point.
make sure that you're doing that well?
Yeah, so how do you know when the problem is defined enough and real enough?
Yeah.
Man, that's a hard one. I think if you think about a problem, it's combining a bunch of stuff, right? Like if you're talking about a problem, it's like how aligns it with where you're headed and what your objectives are, and how well does it map to those two things, and then really what we're trying to figure out is like how big of a problem is it, right? Like it's a little small problem, and you waste 2 or 3 or 4 weeks on it, and you achieve your success metrics, you're like, so what? We moved our metrics by like a very small incremental amount. So what we tend to do to normalize for that is we will place bets that are incremental to 10 or 100x, right? So at any point in time, if you look at a roadmap, we'll have 2 or 3 or 4 problems that we're prioritizing that might equate to a 5 to 10% increase in admin activity in user voice. But the other thing we do are these like off-the-wall things where we're like, this could be a 10 next year. You know, where we're like, let's hire 500 hourly people and have them automatically curate feedback for people and insights appear out of nowhere, right? So like, that is a big investment and a big risk for the company, and the confidence is low, but the outcome could be high. And so instead of like trying to go deep like 50 times over and be like, this problem's real, you just try to balance the distribution of the upside of solving a given problem. So we kind of balance our roadmap that way. Last one, yeah.
So your comment about more agile, can you share maybe some examples of how things have changed? And also, especially in the B2B world, is there a limit to being too agile?
Is there a limit to being too agile? Yeah, like, you know, I think a lot of the companies that you go into just as an advisor, they're like, we're agile, and you go in and it's totally waterfall. You're like, well, we do Scrum. It's like, yeah, but you know, your software development process is like this. I think the thing that you want to manage in like B2B SaaS from an agile point of view is make sure that you're still shipping software, right? So like, make sure that you're still putting things in front of customers that they can actually use, even if it's only a percentage of those customers. You know, the complexity of your product might, you know, influence that. There's a lot of training involved, so on and so forth. But again, you know, there's a lot of great solutions out there, like WalkMe or kind of all these companies that will guide people through these experiences, so you can kind of ease off customer success if you are pushing software really fast, and you don't need to facilitate onboarding and activation on those things. Okay. Cool.
Thanks a lot, Jason. While we switch things up, we have some presents, small but super exciting presents from my product. If you're in the first or second row here, you can look at your chair for a name tag with a smiley face on it. Here you go.
Don't sell this chair.
Here. First row, like here, right here, so here's what we're gonna do. There you go, sit in. Back again. Okay. And I haven't seen it, so that's fine.
Cool. So it was interesting, Jason and I had talked briefly a couple times when we were preparing for the talks. And you took on kind of a macro review of like how is product management as a whole changing. What I want to take was a view of, you know, how does product management, the role of product management evolve as both companies scale and there's just internal company change. So a question for kind of level set a little bit, how many people are not even in product management, they're here? Got a few, okay. How many are new to product management, been around like 2 years or less? If you're there, 5 years or less. Cool. Anybody more than 10 years? Where are you? So a little bit. So we'll talk about some things you're going to see, right? And that's kind of what my mindset was, because a little bit of me, kind of my perspective. So it's interesting. The number of times I've gone to a talk, or I've read a Medium article, or something on LinkedIn around product management, but they didn't give the context from which they were talking. So as product management, it's our job to know our users' needs and understand the market and give, like, understand personas and all of that. Oftentimes in PM, we don't do that. We actually, you know, share our knowledge. And so mine, I'll be honest, this is going to be heavily weighted to B2B. I've been in B2B for 12 years. I've been in enterprise software for too long, but for a while. I've been in companies of every shapes and sizes. I've been at 10-person companies that were European-based, UK, the US office of 3 people. I went through a series of acquisitions where I went from like 25 to a 200 to a 100,000 person company in 3 years. And saw product management evolve in those different organizations. I've been public, I've been private, I've been at public equity companies. So, you know, I've been through the ringer a little bit in the product management space. And over 12 years, product management and how people define it has changed a lot. I'm an unapologetic full stack product manager. Definitely claim to be full stack developer. I think we need to lay claim to the term full stack product manager. For me, that means from market all the way through development and back out. It's the full go-to-market life cycle. And so one of the things I'll touch on is kind of the fragmentation of some of the roles and the pitfalls that you get when people say, oh, we do product management here, and you show up, and you're like, I'm not really quite sure that what you call product management, what I would call product management, right? And then it's interesting because part of this came about in the last year. I did some significant hiring, and you know, in the area with lots of different companies. Flavors of product management, if you moved around the country, I know Jason has, myself, if you move around different regionalities, PM varies by the flavor of the organizations that are there. And so I was in Houston, Texas for 10 years, close to Austin. We kind of had a nice scene there. I got here, PM is a little different. You know, the biopharma, medical, IBM world, that puts a different spin on what product management looks like and what companies define it as. And so when I was trying to hire people, I was like, hey, you're a product manager, what do you do? And they told me what they did, and I was like, that's like part of the job, but the rest of it, like, oh, we had other people that did that. So there was this hyper fragmentation of the role. So hopefully you'll walk out of here and you'll understand tonight a couple of ways it changes and grows. You know, as the company changes and grows, the roles of PM can change in different size organizations. As business needs change, it's not a bad thing, it's just an awareness aspect of it. And some of the ability to kind of learn and kind of size up, like, okay, what does product management really look like here? And what are some questions I can ask in my career to better identify, is this really the right fit? I've bounced companies before because what they said they wanted versus what they really did were 2 completely different things. That's just part of being a PM journeyman at this point, right? So it's kind of finding the best fit. Don't feel bad about trying to find the right fit. You know, I had some colleagues that I worked with for years. They were, you know, the CEO or the developer and the CTO. They knew their best fit was early stage companies, right? Take somebody that was a little beyond the startup, ramp them up. They got big, they sold, they did it again. They started over, and I was like, it's Groundhog Day. They're like, yeah, that's what we do best. I don't do big companies, I don't do slow growth, I don't do startups. I take them and I accelerate them and I get out. So you'll find your fit. There are so many titles. See, all right, somebody got the joke, thank you. All right, I was wondering, like, okay. The number of different titles that are out there for product managers or product managers is pretty daunting, pretty crazy. I've had quite a few, you probably have quite a few of these. There's a spectrum, right, which we'll talk about in a second, but you know, all of it comes from this, pragmatic. How many people put the pragmatic framework recently? Yeah, you lied. Just say recently, you're all lying. You've done pragmatic training, it was great, you went to it, you said, this is awesome, I know what my job is about, and then the real world hit, right? Funny, while preparing for this, I dug something, I was like, oh, pragmatic, it's, you know, that'd be great. I look at this, and it's broad, right? Pragmatic has this broader mandate, marketing, you know, sales enablement, product management. There are many parts of this that I started looking at this, and I was like, I don't think this has ever been in the product management bucket, right? Sales enablement, if you get to certain size companies, you do a little bit of that, but you have sales channels, like deep marketing does that stuff. You know, some of those stuff is just pure business type things, right? So it's great that they have this expansive view. I take this really good valuable piece to kind of remind you like how big the world could be. But reality is, this type of specialized world, a lot of parts of this get killed off. Like the fringe kind of elements will get cut off because there's other groups that specialize in that, particularly in the high growth, rapid growth industries. Baseline thought. Regardless of whether the role exists, somebody is doing product management in a company. Okay? Case in point, company I'm at now, we've done a series of acquisitions. Of the 4 companies we've acquired, only 2 have a formal PM function. And they were all multi-million-dollar organizations. Some were $20, $30 million in scale. They didn't have a person with the title of product manager in the organization. So the stuff happens, it's just who's doing it and where does it come from. So I'm going to make some generalizations here to kind of simplify the landscape for purposes of discussion. But I always think about, and I was telling people, I know I do this as a whiteboard to my teams, and people want to explain like how does product management evolve and what it look like. So this is my adaptation of a whiteboard, Sam's whiteboard. I think there's always a spectrum within kind of any kind of organization of people who are internal facing and market facing. Makes sense, right? Not rocket science or anything, crazy cool. Your market facing groups, sales, now customer success, marketing, support. There could be others, SEs, professional services. For the sake of argument, we'll keep it simple. Internally, it's mostly development. Yes, we'll have sales ops, finance, all those guys. Assume back office is off the picture. From a product perspective, this is kind of what we're looking at, okay? Somewhere in the middle is where the magic happens, right? The product management happens about taking the market-facing information, all that customer-facing information, translating that, synthesizing that, which is kind of what Jason's talking about. How do we do discovery, understand it, prioritize it, and work with the teams to say, hey, here's the problem, how do you do something with it, okay? So now we're going to go explore how this little landscape changes based on the kind of the biases of the company and its size. So technology-centric companies, think of these as small, if they're small companies, they could be a small startup driven by like a developer founder, right? At some point, if it's a small startup, everybody has the title of C something. So your initial lead developer is your CTO/CEO. Maybe the CEO is actually a developer as well too. But there's a technology bias in that organization. What that means is they're building to a vision, right? There's like, we're gonna go, build the next coolest AI machine thing. We're gonna do something really awesome. I'm gonna build to my vision, right? But Jason's talking about kind of getting that feedback and that validation post-launch. It's gonna come back in, and they can deal with it because the volume at that point, either due to scale or just kind of where they are, it's not so overwhelming. So they're like, yeah, we're iterating. We're a team of 8, 10, 12 people, right? We're not a very big company at this point. We can handle that feedback and we can take it all back in. But it's still being driven like a technology-centric view of how we're going to drive this. So kind of that, we have the mission we're going to deliver against. Change it around where, maybe it's more of a sales-centric organization. It could be that you've got a non-technical founder. It could be that you've got a developer, the technology team is like, we just want to build stuff. You guys tell us what to go build and we'll do it. Well, then the flow reverses, right? Lots of sales and marketing input coming in, lots of saying like, oh, this is what the customers want because they're trying to find product market fit, they're trying to find that validation. So there's much more kind of sales and marketing piece with supporting information coming to support. And so development's like, okay, great, we'll go build that. One of the companies we've got now that I'm working with, or part of our portfolio, was really this. They've actually changed over time what that looked like, but a lot of their drive actually came from sales and marketing saying, this is where we need to go. The next deal, we can close another deal if we support X or do X or Y. So it's always that constant, do the next thing and grow. You can grow a company like that. These guys got $20-something million over the course of several years. It can be done, but development takes a pounding. That's kind of the risk there. They're just like, we're overwhelmed, which gets into kind of the next evolution, right? So you get to be a medium-sized company, you're technology-centric, dev being the wonderful Scrum, Agile, methodology, practicing people. We need a product owner, right? Well, the big distinction tonight between product owner capital P and product owner little p, right? So they can be used differently. In this case, development's saying, hey, I need somebody to, as I'm pushing stuff out, to triage and manage all these different requests. So I'm not really looking for someone to tell me what to do or give me insights from the market. I need an air traffic controller. I need someone to handle the prioritization piece, which actually, they talk about, we spend sometimes too much time in prioritization pieces. This is where it starts. Because the first person in, if they don't change the role of PM and focus on discovery and managing that, you already set kind of the organizational bias to be, oh, you're a product owner? Here's a bunch of stuff, go figure it out, prioritize. I can go faster as a development lead if you give me better specs tell me exactly what I need to code, and my machine will code it. I've been at a company that we went from 500 to 1,000 people, and they had a product management organization, but they were heavily loaded with product owners. And devs like, I need better specs. I can do more, go faster, we can get to market faster. If I have more product owners telling me exactly what I need to code. Which is kind of the antithesis of what product management is about and where we want the space to go, where that belongs. Yeah, I like this one. It's one of those things, from those like epiphanies that kind of hits you as you're working through stuff. A little bit controversial. So if you're a product owner, this is not a kind of attack on the product owner role, but oftentimes companies introduce that role because they're solving a wrong problem, right? They think their problem is we can go faster if we have better specs. We can go faster if someone prioritizes stuff for us. We've got too much inflow. What they really don't know is what they're trying to do, where they're trying to go, and it is the upmarket problem of discovery, etc. So you end up with basically a secretary or an air traffic controller trying to consolidate the feedback, push it across, and just say, there you go, dev. But you never wonder why, like, we did all that stuff, but we never really saw sales take off. We got a couple of more sales, but never a lot more sales. It's because you're not solving big problems, right? The organization's not stepping back saying, what do we really need? What we really need is strong discovery, strong product management that will really own that space and guide as we go forward as an organization. On the sales-centric side, same kind of pattern, product owner is there. In this case, it's still got an air traffic controller model, right? You're still trying to kind of funnel the feedback, a little bit of insulation from development to help manage that, but you haven't really gotten closer to understanding that. It's all coming through sales and marketing. Eventually, sales will get to a point that sales will, hey, there's a variation on this. Maybe what we really need is something called a product marketer that tells how the product fits in the market, or like how we can best go to market better, right? So what we've done now is really, in this kind of model, split the product management role, right? Begin to hyper-segment it down. Maybe marketing and sales is like, hey, we just need a little more help. How do we actually launch this thing? Our launches are great. Let's get a little better launch. So they introduce a product marketer. Maybe it's somebody to do win-loss calls. Hey, we're not getting quite the right feedback. Let's bring somebody in to do win-loss calls, product-specific splits, etc. A lot of different reasons why this happens, but you still split the role. And all that does is just another person to gather feedback to push it into the product owner at that point. Okay. Sometimes in an organization, you will get the product managers. This organization begins to show up, the product management role. In which case, you've got feedback coming in, product management's like, yes, I'm going to understand this. They are, in this case, product management is reaching beyond that piece, but they truly are taking up that space and saying, yeah, we can own this. And in a medium-sized company, you can probably get away with this because product marketing is probably tucked under, with marketing. Sometimes it lives in marketing, sometimes it's a separate org. Sometimes it lives in product. In a medium-sized, it waffles. This is where you're going to see that a lot of these roles, depending on who's leading marketing, who's leading sales and products, some of these things are just, they'll get shuffled around. I've got stories of, the number of times titles, roles, different people took place. It's like, no, marketing came in and said, no, product marketing is part of us. And it's like, no, we don't want that. It goes under product management. The leader product manager, like, I don't know what the product marketing is, marketing. And so like, it kind of had this weird kind of back and forth a little bit. Stuff happens in that space, right? As companies grow and evolve, trying to figure out what really works. But you can begin to see, like, depending on, what the natural biases of the organization, you can look at their org structure, and you can figure out, okay, who's really in charge, who's making decisions, who's driving certain things. And when you see true product management organizations evolve, in a best place scenario, product management is separate. It reports into its own, the CEO. That's the best case scenario. If you find a company where product management reports into a CEO, that's your first indicator you're more of a product-centric company. If it reports into the dev, you're going to have more of a natural dev bias to them, right? More of a technology, more of that Scrum safe model. If they report into sales and marketing, you're commercial, right? You're going to slant more of that commercial side, more product marketing view. You're going to be challenged a lot to agree to customer one-off requests, in which case you're being relegated back to a funny BA type role, which is how do I make this customer request work? which means you're half commercial, but also they get into being the product owner again, which is, here's a customer spec, we'll win this deal if we can make this happen, find a way to make it happen. So, some changes that happen in that space. Slight tangent for a minute. This is a good point to talk about scaling product management. Roman Pickler actually does a decent job of breaking down his website. It's a quick read. I used it myself to kind of weigh some pros and cons in terms of an organization and try to make some product changes. There's the URL, you Google on him, yeah, scaling the product owner. Notice, so, thing to be aware, if you're talking to your organizations, there are people that use product owner as the very specific role in the organization versus the product owner as a function of who is the ultimate stakeholder for the product. Roman talks about it in more generic terms that can be used across any organization, which is capital P product owner. Very different, right? Because he even says the product owner is the stakeholder, is the ultimate stakeholder, the one that can make the ultimate decisions. Some variations that go on here are, breaking down a massive product into like components and features. So your product, your top product owner here, who's responsible for strategy and roadmap and all of that, is probably your director, your VP, depending on the size of the organization. It's going to be probably your management level product organization. And then the PM team itself is organized by features, components, modules, whatever it might be. Another way to do it is maybe your product grows and scales to a point that you can split it out. And you can say, we have product A, now product B. Probably happens a lot going from small to medium, sometimes maybe medium to large, kind of, that thing can happen, you can scale it out. But a similar function here, just kind of a derivative of what this looks like here. You get two different products and you do things differently. One that happens quite a bit, right? This is trying to vertically scale the PM role. I'm gonna say I hate this. I think this is one of the things that actually probably breaks the PM role the most, because you're splitting strategic and tactical, right? If all of a sudden now, if you're not careful about managing this and you try to scale more vertically, what you end up with is sometimes these guys, the tactical product owner, can't really make the ultimate decisions if they don't really know what the strategy is. So when you begin to break strategy and tactic, I think it's a fundamental flaw. And personal bias, I hate SAFe. I'm sorry if anybody's practicing it, I hate SAFe. I've been in an organization that had it, unfortunately we were able to roll it back. It just creates some weird friction points and really who owns product decisions. I've seen mishaps happen here where the two don't get aligned. Strategy and tactical, product owners like, hey, cool, we did all this stuff. It's like, yeah, strategically, we're trying to go over here. Like, you're not able to keep track of what's going on. This actually seems to happen a lot as a way to scale. This breaks my full stack product manager kind of ownership now, because strategy and discovery, or a lot of times discovery is driving the vision of the strategy. Jason talked about that, right? Reiterate the strategy, reiterate the vision, the purpose of what you're trying to do. And if you don't own that and the execution of it, get to diverge. All right, so large companies. A couple little things here. Pretty common setup that I've seen a lot is to have the product marketing function being independent. They're not the gatekeeper for product management. Don't think that out of the visual here. It's more just kind of an independent product marketing organization. I've been a part of some really strong ones that did really solid win loss calls, did really solid competitive analysis. You go back to the pragmatic framework and you peel off some of those layers there. Do the competitive analysis, what's really going on in the market trends, do the win-loss calls. They can do that at a volume that a PM sometimes can't do. But you can give a couple of them. Or you can use the scale of marketing to help drive that goal. That can really be helpful. So you have that information coming in, going to product marketing, you're getting feedback from sales as well too. Nice, happy kind of function. Talk about having this being split off. Sometimes there's a dedicated product owner role. It's often just that time of just trying to get faster. We want to iterate faster, we have more, we can execute faster. It's more of an execution problem. And I would argue that if you have an execution problem, and you're having trouble deciding like exactly how something should work, exactly how it should be done, you have a discovery problem instead. If you can't make a decision, A or B, you don't have enough data. If you don't have enough data or enough of the right point of view on it, missed something in discovery. Because if you spend too much time hemming and hawing over character length, or should it be, it's a decision that I see people get stuck over about left or right, which way do we really go at this point? I go back and say, call a customer, right? It's a discovery problem because if nobody really knows or you don't have enough data, and it's that important a decision, go do the discovery. And if it's really not, ship it and iterate, right? So I think a lot of times, this breaks that flow. This just breaks the flow of, can we really make this decision here? Well, I don't know, let me go back and check with them. It's just it's another, it's like a game of telephone, right? Gossip or whatever, or bit by bit it changes over time. My flow's in. Cool. So yeah, I think key things to take away. Product management exists in every company, every software company for sure. If you're building and shipping products, someone's doing product management. Someone's trying to figure out what do we build, how do we build it, what's the value behind it. The question is whether or not the role exists. The role, how that's set up, the functions, what it does, depends on the organization, depends on its history. And it's this piece right here. I have examples of long-running large companies that are like technical. Oracle's a good example. Larry Ellison was a developer. They are technology biased in everything they do. They've gotten really savvy around the marketing piece as well too, but they're technology first. Having been in that organization, if the VP of development or whatever says this is what we're going to do, it moves. And that's all the way, all levels up. They probably, I haven't done a formal analysis, anecdotally I can say, I've seen more technology leaders, more VPs of development, etc., move into CEO roles or business unit or general manager roles there than I have marketing and sales experts. Right? So they have a natural bias in the development organization, which means dev calls the shots in terms of how PM teams are structured. A lot of times PM teams roll into dev teams, and they're kind of like the, hey PM, figure this stuff out, right? So they shifted it that way. That kind of goes important. So if you're in an existing role, you're trying to figure out like, hey, is this the right fit for me, or how do I make the most out of my role now? Like you're in a place like, I like the company, I like what we're doing. How do I figure out where I can go in this organization? First is figure out the origin story. How's PM evolved? What's the start of that organization? And how do we really see roles and responsibilities? Know where you are today. Know how they see product management, how they embrace product management. Find gaps. Career-wise, I've been able to do in a lot of organizations. If you're not a sales and marketing-driven organization, go-to-market will be very weak. So if you're a technology-led organization, many times they're weak on go-to-market. So if you want to make a dent and have an impact as a product manager, pick up go-to-market. Slide a little more into the product marketing role and driving the release and the launch and some of that piece, and help out marketing. It's a way to elevate yourself because you're getting closer to revenue as well in that aspect of it, by kind of in the launch process. Process improvements, those are great ways. So if you have an organization that's big on process improvements, driving efficiency, you can use those to redefine the role of product management. Say, hey, product management needs to do this, support can peel back a little bit, dev can peel back a little bit. We can expand our areas of responsibility. So use, related to that, if there's an org change, there's new leadership coming in, take advantage of those as well too. Like there's, these two often come in together. Org changes happen, new leader comes in, they want to make a splash, they want to shift things up. Have your observations and say, hey, here's how I think we can improve our PM process. Here's how I think we can take more responsibility. We can help out marketing. We can help out dev and give them more autonomy. Right? If we spend more time in discovery, they'll have more time to collaborate and work together to go to execution and delivery. If you're looking for a new role, or you've had the occasion looking for a new role, one of my favorite questions to ask, going back to a PM-centric view of the world, what problem does this role solve? It's surprisingly enough, if you ask that, they will tell you immediately, top of mind, why they're hiring for that role. Sometimes it's as easy as, oh, we lost a guy, right? Somebody left. Fantastic. What did they do? Right? Dig into some of this stuff. I was interviewing for product managers. I talked to a lot. I had a lot of product managers that when I said, where do you get your feedback from? Sales, SMEs, industry marketing managers, they gave me a whole list of job titles. I said, how often do you talk to customers? Occasionally, right? They were using internal proxies rather than doing the job themselves, right? That's a hard habit to break, to say, oh, I'm gonna wait for sales to know what to do, I'm gonna process that. That kind of falls into that more of a, I'm a prioritization machine than I am a discovery and product management machine. Who writes the stories? If you're a product manager that hasn't written a story in a couple of years, you're probably more in product marketing than you are in product management. Because at that point, you're focusing on that side of it. If you're not writing the stories, you're just doing some high-level discovery. And you're just passing that on over the wall, which means somebody else ultimately has control over what it is. And that's just one more link in the chain that can cause misinterpretation and kind of a breakdown between what we saw on the market versus what's going to get delivered. So my PMs, and I had a bunch of PMs that didn't like it because they had a team of POs. I actually blew it all apart and said, we're going to, rather than slicing vertically or horizontally, we're going to slice vertically. So I pivoted my entire team around and said, you're all full stack PMs, let's dust off the story writing skills and figure out how to write them again. Because it really makes you think about the problem, makes you think about what's really important and working with dev a lot more. This stuff just kind of tells you what your role's going to look like. I've seen PM roles that drift more into Scrum Masters and some of that stuff. Project manager roles. If you see a lot of program management, project management, and BAs, or product owners, you're probably kind of an IT-based organization. So, I'm going to go back for a second. One of these views here, if you're heavy sales, and you've got the product owner in place, kind of here, this kind of begins to take a feel of an IT-based organization. If you hear the word business, the business said, then that's the business in a lot of organizations. Sales and marketing is the business. If it says like, oh, the business says we need to go do this, you don't really have a product-centric organization, you have a sales-centric organization or a different slant on it, right? So that's kind of another thing to listen for. If you're looking for new roles, is like the vocabulary they use to describe the job and how the business works, the overall company works. I learned that lesson the hard way. I thought I could change it. You can't. Changing an embedded culture like that can be pretty difficult. So, anyways, what was good takeaways? There's the macro level changes inside the companies. You'll see them, they'll grow, they'll scale, they'll be different. Organizational changes will drive some of that. So I think we'll take things tonight, but happy to take a couple of questions. I think we're doing okay on time. So fire away. We have updates on you. What's up, Scott?
Hey, how's it going? So, you talked a lot about how that hierarchical nature will go to the scale.
Yeah.
That the telephone game doesn't work so well. I agree. But what do you think works best in that environment from a product owner and the full stack approach you're describing now as you grow?
Yeah.
You know that you're going to outrun the capacity of something.
Yeah, I wonder, and so it always depends, because I think it depends on what the problem you're trying to solve, right? Where is the process breaking down? Is it really purely that you're trying to get to, because it goes back to, okay, we're scaling, but where's the breakdown in our process? Is it that we can't figure out, is it the road mapping discovery problem, that we're not hitting that, or is it an execution problem? If it's an execution problem, I think the alternative could be making sure that dev and design and others feel involved in that process, because there's other ways to scale the solutioning part of it. And too often I think we lean on product owners to do the final last mile solutioning. I think at extreme scale, when you get to like the tens of thousands or whatever, maybe it has to get brought back in. I think the risk of the run there is your PMs have to be pretty heavily involved in some of the processes that are around it, right? Are they really tying, because the PM then has to be the one to hold together two parts of the organization and say, okay, strategically we're doing this. This is just a feature in one release, but does that shift the way we execute against that strategy? We're really nailing that strategy and execution. So the role of PM shifts again in like the really big size organizations. And you can be more of a bridge and a conduit. So you can't shirk your responsibility and be like, oh, they've got all that. It's probably more of an oversight role. I think that's some of the product owner pieces as well. I think too often it's like, oh, hey, here's high level stories, go sketch them out and write them for me. And and not a, do we really do it? They're not part of sprint demos. I've seen where PMs like advocate responsibility for sprint demos and executing, like either A, you have to delegate the execution and completion of that to the product owner and run the risk of the disconnects, or stay involved and be like, hey, this is great, and be involved in that, the validation process, but you're staying on track. Because ultimately, you're kind of the one that has to bridge that gap and say, yep, these two, I can see how this is going to get us to our strategy and execute against it. Yeah.
Touched on it briefly, but can you talk a little bit more about examples in which you may sort of have an aha moment and realize things need to change in terms of the roles and responsibilities?
Yeah, it's most often in my experience, those have come from trying to say, unfortunately, from a negative event, like a release doesn't go as well, or there's some where you may have taken on paid development for a company or a sales, as part of a sales deal. By the way, bad idea, never good, nobody does, but paid development, you'll land a deal. It's been some of those things that have highlighted that this process is broken or our structure is broken. And those are the cases where it's like, okay, what happened, right? And so a lot of times we were able to use some of those events, like having this overly, in one example, we couldn't figure out why we were not able to execute against our roadmap. So sales every year came back and said, this is the same roadmap you showed me last year. We actually went further back. We went back 5 years and found the same stuff on a roadmap that was 5 years old. And I pulled it out and I said, look, here it is. You want to know why? It's because I hate to say it, sales, because everybody is able to go and say yes to every customer, and we sold our roadmap for the last 5 years. And it's like, so going forward, we're not going to do any custom dev as part of the sales deal. Like, take the product, sell what we've got, and just sell it. And part of what we had done, that was one of our kind of like our aha moments that I've seen before. Moments where you've got teams that are bogged down. The product owners and the dev teams are like, I don't know what I'm doing in why, because they were so far disconnected from what the market was saying. Because someone had just passed along a ticket saying, we need to go build this feature. Great, fantastic. Go to the wall product owners. They got it. So okay, I think it's this. Dev's like, well, how does it really get used? So what about this? The product owner was like, I don't know. Went back to PM. PM was like, I think it's this. I'm not really sure. Let me go find out. It just kills morale. It was like, hey, our throughput's not there, our teams are bogging down, why? And it was because of that process, the way we had built the org structure didn't enable people to be true owners and drive execution. So, unfortunately, they're negative events, not great events, but you can use them to drive change and better understand how to fix it.
Yeah, thank you, Wes. And I'd like to know your profile in organizations. I'm curious about who owns innovation, who owns innovation.
That's another pet peeve topic of mine. I hate these. I personally don't like special groups to go off and do innovation. That's my personal take. Because I think I was a part of an organization that the Princess Bride meme, I pulled that out actually on them because they kept saying re-innovate, re-innovate. I'm like, guys, you can't innovate. No one's innovating that much. That was all we wanted to do. It was like, we just need to ship product. So I think we need to overread about it. I don't think anybody owns innovation. Innovation happens over time, right? If you set out to go innovate something, and unless you're trying to break into a new market, you've got some crazy new technology or really different spin on it. If you're in a B2B, especially a B2B SaaS space or B2B space, Jason kind of touched on it. Companies there want kind of evolutionary change, not revolutionary change. And I think by doing really good discovery, the org itself will have some aha moments between PM trying to talk to sales about, hey, what's going on in the market? What are you seeing in product marketing? It really is the collective thought to try to get there. And sometimes you don't know if you innovated until after you've shipped and you've got the market response from it. Because it's truly innovative. People haven't seen it before. It's really new. At first blush, a lot of people won't even recognize it. They're like, I don't get it. Why? Like, it doesn't quite meet my needs now because you're probably doing a phase shift or some sort of massive shift on space that not everybody will recognize right away. So to go out and say, oh, here's this group's going to go innovate. Teams spend tons of money trying to drive innovation and doing that. I think you can have those little skunkworks teams to do that, but I've been at a company that did it. We went off and they actually, twice a year, we did this crazy hackathons. And so they break the dev team up. There's always dev driven, right? Go innovate dev. They would take the dev team, split the dev team up, they would organize any way you want. They did hackathons. And the best idea, they would try to bring to market. They also had this kind of policy in place that whoever won basically was panel of internal judges and some external judges as well. They were trying to bring that idea to market. We actually took that, and I've seen it fail unfortunately, where took an idea and they spent 18 months trying to bring that idea to market. They thought it was so innovative. Like, wow, we're taking core technology, we're gonna take it down market. It was really it was big data driven, data science, really cool. Everything it looked at on the surface as being innovative, but we had lost sight of the market and what the market was looking for. They took it to market. The smaller companies couldn't handle it because in this case it was a dynamic pricing technology. Their ERP and pricing systems couldn't handle more than one price per SKU. So we had totally missed product market fit, even though the idea was really cool. It was a really cool way to apply technology. Did we really innovate or not? Because we had lost sight of like driving value. So I think real innovation comes from driving value, which is probably going to happen organically through the course of really good discovery and development processes and time. I think overnight innovation is kind of a myth. My 2 cents. The back.
I had a question about the large companies who have complex products. What if they come up with a new product, and how do you think then the responsibilities of product marketing or product manager or the owner changes?
Yeah, so in that case, you almost have like a small company and a big company. The good news is you may have a leg up because if you're in a large company that says, oh, here's the thing I'm going to bring to market. If you have a good product management practice, then you can almost jumpstart because you can be more product centric by creating a truly cross-functional, like small company inside of it. Whether or not you need the scale of it, like you could part-time it with, your resource levels could change a little bit, but you probably still need a dedicated PM to it because it's really going to be that important. It's a new product you're trying to drive to launch. Driving a new product to launch is one of the hardest things to ever do. Even if you're already an existing player in the space, like a truly net new product, because if you're a really large company, you need massive growth to continue through public especially, right? 2% growth on a couple $100 million to beat market is a lot. And so there's a lot of expectations that come around the launch. So you want to make sure you're a pretty savvy team to help drive some of that. Doesn't mean you need to overload it and do that, but you want to make sure that you're like, okay, how are we going to go to launch? Really think about the go-to-market process. Really good defined use cases so you can scale and hit product market fit and your customers really quickly. So I would say, decent sales team, product marketing or savvy marketing. Well, really more product marketing than marketing at that point because you have the corporate marketing umbrella. But product marketing, PM, and a good dev team and some sales guys, right? Kind of pull that team out. So then you have like a little mini big team on the side that doesn't have all the things around technical founders, etc. I think we'll do more and then we'll break. Everybody good? Anybody?
I did have a question. You talked a lot about a bunch of different models for companies.
Yes.
A lot of problems with those models. Design from scratch. Like go restricted, split level.
Wait, you know more about bias. It's actually I probably didn't sit on long enough. This is probably my preferred, right? Like I think here's the reason why. If you have product management, I prefer having a product marketing counterpoint because they cover a lot of ground for you, right? They kind of extend that product marketing framework to kind of pick that up. I think at this point you've got really good insight. You've got scale of insights and scale of discovery. You got lots of information coming in. Product marketing can help you do that. Product management then says, okay, one, I'm going to get my own perspective on the market because you just need to have your own. You need to understand the language, and a language proxy is really hard, right? So I think making sure you're out there talking to customers as well, you're augmenting what you learn internally, because otherwise you rely too much on them. Sales guys sell the last deal, right? They're always selling the customer they lost, etc. It's very rare to find a salesperson who can take a macro view or a long view. And then at this point, you kind of own that full connection development. Right? So you've got good market insights, you're doing that. This to me is the full stack PM model with the product marketing for scale and augmentation on that piece. So yeah, I don't think this is bad. This is like, I should label this like product centric, the holy grail, right? What it gets down to is like, how do you then scale this? Right? We talked about that. scaling multiple PMs, you get kind of your hierarchies there. You know, I think Scott raises a question, like what happens when you get like macro size? Potentially, you break your teams down, right? Are you breaking it small enough? The Spotify model got overused for a couple of years, and I'll reference that because we all know it. They broke the product down to very small components, right? They were small, autonomous teams, PM, dev, working together to build that. So if you're having a problem with scale, break something down further, right? You can always go smaller. When you get bigger, you have complexity, process growth, bloat, overhead.
Just if you could touch on briefly, you mentioned at least using the same vocabulary across teams.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a point that you needed to reach sort of consensus where you're creating a dictionary or glossary based on this?
I'm actually doing that process now. So we've merged multiple companies, our technologies, we also have the same problem. We use different product technologies to do the same functionality. We're actually trying to pull out all of our persona definitions and people definitions to recalibrate our nomenclature. Because I've seen, we actually did it once, we spent weeks, we probably lost a couple of weeks on something just because we were like using the same term, report, but it meant something different in every team. And everybody's like, no, we do it this way, we do that. And we're like, oh, no, you mean that, I mean that. So we're actually, one of our efforts right now is because, you know, but yeah, it happens over time, right? And it's like, the last company I did, we actually came up with a series of terms not to use because we were finding that customers were using internal terms to describe our product back to us. They were using certain branding, certain third-party tools. So they just knew too much about our solution. And so I was like, okay, alternative vocabulary. It is not reporting vendor X that we were using for reporting. It's called reporting. Just call it by the problem that it solves or the function that it serves. It actually helps because it simplifies stuff. It was like, oh yeah, it's that. Because we had so many internal names and brand names and whatever, people got lost. So yeah, absolutely. So, cool. Yeah, think about it coming out.
Just to wrap up real quick before the break, thanks Wes, thanks Jason for coming out and talking, thanks Pendo for hosting, User Voice for bringing the cupcakes and beer. Thanks all of you for attending. So before the end of the year, we hope to have one more happy hour event. We transition off, switch off between content events and happy hour, just grabbing beer and networking with people. So stay tuned on Meetup and different channels for that. Also, I wanted to do a special thank to Isabel. Oh, right there. For putting this all together, getting through 1 year. It was a great time, so give her a round of applause. On that note, she is also leaving our organization team. Hopefully she'll still be coming to events and we can go at her personal network and stuff. But she's starting to host some other meetups, so we are looking for at least one other organizer. So if you're interested, come talk to myself, Wes, or Econ. We have a Slack channel and are pretty informal, as you can tell. So thanks for coming out, and be sure to grab some cupcakes and beer for the road. So thanks.